Summer that I was 10. Can it be there was only one summer that I was 10? It must have been a long one then. Each day I'd go out to choose a fresh horse from my stable, which was a willow grove down by the old canal. I'd go on my 2 bare feet. But then my brother's jackknife had cut me a long limber horse with a good thick knob for a head, and peeled him slick and clean, except a few leaves for the tail, and cinched my brother's belt. Around his head for a rein, I'd straddle and canter him fast up the grass bank to the path, trot along in the lovely dust that talcumed over his hooves, hiding my toes and turning, his feet 2 swift half-moons. The willow knob with the strap jouncing between my thighs was the pommel and yet the pole of my nickering pony's head. My head and my neck were mine, yet they were shaped like a horse's. My hair flopped to the side, like the mane of a horse in the wind. My forelocks swung in my eyes, my neck arched and I snorted. I shied and skittered and reared, stopped, and raised my knees, pawed at the ground and quivered. My teeth bared as we wheeled and swished through the dust again. I was the horse and the rider, and the leather I slapped to his rump spanked my own behind. Doubled my 2 hooves beat a gallop along the bank. The wind twanged in my mane, my mouth squared to the bit, and yet I sat on my steed. Quiet, negligent riding, my toes standing the stirrups, my thighs hugging his ribs. At a walk, we drew up to the porch. I tethered him to a paling. Dismounting, I soothed my skirt, and entered the dusky hall. My feet on the clean linoleum left ghostly toes in the hall. "Where have you been?" said my mother. "Been riding," I said, from the sink, and filled me a glass of water. "What's that in your pocket?" she said. "Just my knife." It weighed my pocket and stretched my dress awry. "Go tie back your hair," said my mother. "And why is your mouth all green?" "Rob Roy, he pulled some clover, and we crossed the field," I told her.
May Swinson's The Centaur is, at first glance, a simplistic poem, but has much more to offer than what meets the eye. The title, The Centaur, refers to a half-human, half-horse creature from Greek mythology. However, the title isn't used anywhere else in the poem. The poem begins with an adult speaker reminiscing about her childhood. Her tone is thoughtful and filled with wonder, like a narrator's would right before a movie does that whole ripple into a flashback thing. Which is pretty much exactly what happens, because the second stanza begins to tell a story of a lengthy summer during the speaker's childhood. Wait a minute, you might say. She just said that summer was a long one? Aren't all summers technically the same length? This sort of impossible statements let you know how the speaker felt about the summer. This isn't a complaint about how the summer dragged on, it's a fond memory. Even before the speaker has started to describe the events of the poem, we already have an idea of how the speaker feels about them. The last half of stanza 2 and the beginning of stanza 3 give us our first hint about horses. Not real horses, however, but a stable that is a willow grove down by the old canal. Combining this information with the fact that the speaker is 10 at the time, this description sets up a mythical place away from reality, where a young girl goes to cut an imaginary horse from a branch. Note that the girl uses her brother's knife and belt to form her horse, which hint that she may not own boyish things of her own. Let's put a tally down for feminism, shall we? Lines 20 and 21 give us the first hint of a transformation happening. This explains why the speaker described her going down to the willow grove on her own 2 feet, rather than the imagined for now here. Lines 17 through 37 give us fantastic imagery of the horse, and how it blends with the speaker. Vivid verbs like shied, skittered, reared, and quivered all resemble horse-like behavior. Line 38 concludes this description with a candid statement: "I was the horse and the rider." This leads into another section of description and action, and makes the combination of girl and horse clear. The speaker describes herself as having both her mouth squared to the bit, but also her toes standing in the stirrup, my thighs hugging his ribs. Soon after, she dismounts, and leaves the horse outside. Instead of carrying on the sentence past the ends of the stanza, like in previous ones, stanzas 16 and 18 both end with the end of a sentence. These signify the separation of ideas, and in stanza 18, the end of the speaker's fantasy. The added description of her toe prints being ghostly again suggests the supernatural fantasy of the speaker fading away. And in stanza 19, the first dialogue appears. It's not in quotations, but italicized, which keeps with the imaginary tone and feel throughout this entire poem. These last 2 stanzas reveal a relationship between the speaker and the mother. The mother obviously doesn't approve of the speaker's daytime play, and the knife stretching her dress awry adds to the feeling that this kind of play threatens to dethrone female expectations. The command of her mother to tie up her hair also serves to squash the horse fantasy, as, if you remember, her hair has been flying in the wind like a horse's mane. This poem's overall theme isn't really about horses at all. It's about freedom of imagination and gender expectations. May Swenson is well known for being one of the most important poets of the 20th century that consistently wrote for women's rights and equality. The Centaur is simplistic and pleasant to read, but comes with a profound message about women's rights and expectations.